I don't even know if I would call it temporary. This is just a straight up experiment at this point. So, hey everybody, Kyle here with Spicer Designs. Welcome back to the channel. So the other day, I was in the shop here and I was working on the Japanese mini dump. All I had was the lights on, the radio going. That was really it. We didn't have any storms that day, but randomly, power went out. All right, it is the middle of the day and my main is on, all my breakers are on. Not making this up. I was literally just working on some rust prevention for the Japanese mini dump, and the lights went out. At the time, I had the door closed and it was pitch black in the shop because I don't have any windows. I really could have used this Bluetti system. I just don't have it installed yet. Now, I'm guessing that the local REMC here was probably doing some work on the lines, had a little shutdown for about an hour, and then the power was back on. No big deal. But for me, it was a big deal because I had work that I was doing and I had to stop. So with all the changes that I have coming up here in the shop, which I recently just covered in a video, I think it's getting to the point where I need to get backup power out here. So with the backup power, I want to be able to power, of course, the lights, the door openers, the beverage cooler so I can keep my Keystones nice and chilly. I also want to keep the camera powered up and the Wi-Fi and the furnace. I do have propane here, so all I have to do is just make sure there's power to the furnace so the blower can run and I can still have heat out here. So like 5 or 6 critical circuits. And to do this, you guessed it, a power station. I know how much everyone loves these power station videos. Yeah. This one is pretty beefy, I will say that. Freaking girthy. I want to just get this thing hooked up to my shop so we could just see exactly how this thing is going to function, because there is a feature on this with its transfer of power, and I don't know how much I like it, but I haven't tried it yet. So what I want to do is do like somewhat of a temporary install in the shop here, just so I could see how exactly it functions and if I want to take the next step to permanently install it in the shop. And yes, I know I just said shop like 15 times. Shop. So this is the newest release from Bluetti. This is the Apex 300. I would say this is one of their highest output products, mostly geared toward whole home protection. So this unit, along with some expansion batteries and some other equipment, which we're gonna figure out here, could power your entire home during an outage. The length of time, that's undetermined, just depends on how much power you're using and how many expansion batteries that you have. Now let's just address the elephant in the room. All of these power stations, it doesn't matter what brand, especially the higher end models, the ones that are more geared toward powering your whole home, they're freaking expensive. That's just a decision that you'll have to make if it's something that you can justify or not. But the sole point of this video is just to provide you with the information that you need about this particular unit in case you are in the market. All right, let's briefly run through some of the main features. We got a lot to do here, so we're gonna make this brief. You've got 4 120 volt outlets on here. That's great. There are no USBs or USB-Cs on this unit. This is more geared for like home backup. This isn't something that you're gonna be carrying out to the campsite and plugging your phone into. Though, it'd be a very nice unit if you do have a camper, and I think that's actually one of the things I might use this for, because the wife and I have been throwing around the idea of getting a travel trailer, just a small one, and this may be the perfect unit to go along with it. That's a whole nother topic. Let's go ahead and turn this thing on. Wow. Lots of lights. It's got all your basic info on here that you would expect to see. You've got your different charging modes, silent, auto, and turbo. I mean, I'm going straight for turbo. You gotta send it. Over here, you have your AC button. When you turn that on, that basically just turns on power to the outlets and possibly even these other ones on the side here, which we'll talk about in a second. And then you've got your eco mode. I'm guessing that does something to save energy. Not sure exactly what. And to be honest, I really don't care. And then you have our voltage selector, 120 or 240. So if we have it in 240, these outlets, even though they're 120, they still work. It doesn't affect them. This switch is more for this side right here. When we're in 120, you'll see right here, that is a 120 volt, 30 amp outlet. This is basically set up for like an RV or a camper. And the good thing about it is this unit will actually output 30 amps of 120 volts. So that is great. Now we have another outlet right here, 4-prong. That one is 240 volts. So for this one, we're gonna need to flip this over to 240, and now we'll have 240 on this outlet. This other one here, this is a proprietary plug for Bluetti, and this actually can receive power and output power all in the same plug. And we're gonna look at that in a little bit because that is what we're gonna be using to get automatic backup power here in the shop. And right here on the front of the unit, this thing will output 3,840 watts, 2,764.8 watt hours. That is very specific. 3,840 watts divided by 120 volts equals 32 amps. So like I mentioned, on that 120 volt 30 amp plug for like an RV or a travel trailer, you'll actually be able to get that full 30 amps or 32 amps. Well, 30, whatever. And it should be half of that for the 240. So you'll get 16 amps of 240 volt. You know, that'll do. But with this system, you can also add on to it, of course. You can add expansion batteries, but that will not add on to your total wattage output. That'll just add on to your watt hour capacity. What you would have to do is get another one of these main head units, and then you have to get like this H1 hub. It's another accessory that they offer where you can connect multiple Apex 300s to this one location, and then you can basically just double or even triple the output wattage of the Apex 300. So you could potentially get up to 3,840 times 3, 11,520 watts of output. That's a lot of juice. Now, I gotta blow out the old sphincter. Yeah. So here's our expansion battery, and this is a B300K, same exact watt hour capacity as the main unit, which is 2,764.8 gigawatts? No, watt hours. They did send me one more of these. It's sitting over there right next to my testes. I would say by now everyone's become pretty well educated on how these things work with the expansion batteries. We got this little jumper cable here, and you're just gonna plug it in. You get a nice click, which is always a good sound. And there's a little lock that locks it in place. Freaking plug it in there and lock it in place. All right, I guess I have to turn it on manually. All right, so it's at 10.2 days. Now it's at 17.3 days with nothing on it. Let's get that out of here. Now, let's figure out how the hell we're gonna tie this thing into the shop panel, figure out exactly how this thing automatically transfers power. Because like I said, it's a little bit different than some of the other units, and I'm not sure exactly how I'm gonna like it. Here is the transfer switch / load center that we're gonna be using. Now, let me just say this for anyone that's new to the channel. I'm an electrician by trade. I have been for a little over 20 years now. So I'm not just like willy-nilly, don't know what the hell I'm doing, slapping this thing on the wall. But that's what it's gonna look like because we're gonna do this totally temporary. I don't want to do a permanent install yet because I just don't know how this thing's gonna work. So I'm just gonna mount this thing right to the wall, right here. This thing's got a little bit of weight to it. Easy. All right, let's open this thing up. Oh, jeez. So this panel is made by Reliance Controls. They're kind of like the go-to for generic transfer switches or manual transfer switches for any type of like generator or backup system that's not like for your entire home. So what they have in here is they have a built-in interlock, utility power on one side, and then you have your generator supply or your alternate source. So as you want to turn on power from your alternate source, as you push this over, it shuts off your utility breaker at the same time, which then isolates utility power so it can't backfeed to the utility company. It's actually a really nice setup and it kind of makes it foolproof. Both of these are 50 amp breakers. All right, so right here, you can see how it's set up. We've got our generator outlet down here on the bottom. Just flip this flap over and you plug in. So as long as you're on utility power, which in this case that would be on, and your alternate source or the generator or the battery power station would be off, there will be no power to this. There's no situation where there will be power to this until you plug in your alternate source. So basically whatever we put in this panel can be fed from either utility or the battery power station. So because this is a temporary setup, I'm not going to get into a bunch of detail. I'm just going to throw you guys on a time lapse, pull this cover off. I'm going to reroute a handful of circuits into this little transfer switch panel at the load center. And then we can take the Apex 300, get it all connected, and see exactly how the system works. Better freaking work. All right, so here's what I did. Now, again, this is, I don't even know if I would call it temporary. This is just a straight up experiment at this point. So by no means am I encouraging anybody to wire it up this way. This is just a quick way to wire this up so we can demonstrate how the system works, and frankly, so I can see myself and make a decision if I want to permanently install it. So what I did was I pulled the cover off and I took the garage door opener circuit, which is for that garage door opener. And if you come over here, you can actually see one of the buttons does not have power, and the other one is for lights. And if you'll notice over there, the second bay of the shop is off. So I pulled the hot and the neutral. I left the ground connected, put on a little extension wire over here, brought it into the emergency backup panel, we'll call it. The grounds, neutrals, all landed. I landed the grounds in here only so that I would have this panel grounded, because those circuits are still grounded over there, if that makes any sense. And then I landed them on these two breakers right here. I actually pulled the breakers out of that panel and put them into this panel. Now right now you can see that the generator or alternate source power breaker is on. The utility's off, and there's actually nothing even connected to the utility. So right now what I could do is I could add another breaker in this panel, say a 50 amp breaker, and I could bring two hots, a neutral, and a ground over here, and I could feed this utility breaker. I could then turn this breaker on and these would have power right now. But I did not hook up that utility circuit because I want everyone to see that the power to the lights and that door opener are going to be coming through the Bluetti Apex 300. The other thing I did was I removed my welding outlet and I installed this 50 amp outlet. This is a 4-prong, so we have two hots, a neutral, and a ground. And I just have them tied into that 30 amp breaker right now. So that is gonna be our power source to the Apex 300. If this is hard to follow right now as I hook it up, it should hopefully make more sense. That thing's got away. Man. If I were to guess, I'd say somewhere around 80 pounds. I'm gonna throw the expansion battery on there. Easy. Here are the two cords that they sent. Extra girthy, I can relate. Lots of Velcro, just like my shoes. So here is that proprietary connector that's going to be accepting voltage and outputting voltage. This is the key to the whole operation right here. On the other end, this is that 50 amp plug. So this one's gonna pop in over here. It's gonna give us a nice little click. Maybe it clicked in. There's even a set screw on there so you can tighten it. That way it can't just pop out, but you have to twist this in order to release it. Now we're gonna take this and plug it into the outlet over here on the wall, which is coming from the main utility panel. Am I doing this right? Yeah, I'm doing it right. So when I turn this breaker on, it's going to now supply power to the Apex 300. Plug this in. Here's the end that plugs into that Reliance control panel. That's gonna go right into the bottom of it. There we go. And the other end is gonna go into this other port here, the 240 volt port. So we're gonna plug this in. Now we should be able to turn the AC on. AC's on, we're on 240. All right, now that everything is hooked up, I'm gonna go ahead and check voltage. Right now, I just have the battery itself powering the sub panel. I don't have the utility breaker on yet, so there's no pass through yet. Should get 240. Yep, we got 240.8 volts. I'm going to turn these two breakers on. We should get our bank of lights and the garage door opener back. Oh, you can see it got brighter. There we go. The last 6 lights are now on. This other breaker, which the overhead door should kick on. There we go. Just for shitties and giggies, let's see if it can handle the garage door. I'd imagine it could. No problemo. All right, let's see what it's pulling real quick. Pulling 1026 watts. All right, just went down to 576. So I ran the battery down on this thing a little bit because I want to see what happens once I turn that utility breaker on. And then we'll actually be getting pass-through power to the sub panel. So the utility power will actually be powering it and not the battery. The battery will only take over if we have an outage. So right now, basically just to run the lights, we're pulling 573 watts and we're at 79%. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this utility breaker on. And now, all right, so we're getting 2,000 watts of AC input. We're still outputting 574 watts, and we are now charging the battery. All right, so here's how this thing is working. It's kind of unique. We're gonna simulate an outage here in a second so we can see what happens with the lights. As far as the bypass or pass-through power, a lot of these units are now having the capability to charge with 240 volts and output 240 volts at the same time. For a while there, a lot of these units could not do that, but now they can. So you would have a 50 amp breaker out of your main utility panel powering the Apex 300. It goes into that input output port, and then out of the 50 amp output, we are feeding our sub panel for all of our critical circuits. And as long as we have power on the utility side, that utility power is just passing right through the Apex 300 and going to your critical circuit panel. At the same time, like right now, if your battery is anything but 100%, it will also start charging your battery too. So if you were to have an outage, which we're about to demonstrate, maybe you have an outage for 8 hours and it wears your battery all the way down to 20%. Once you get power back, it will automatically switch back over to utility power and it will do the pass-through like it's doing right now, and it will automatically start recharging the battery for the next outage. Now you can also hook up solar panels to this system where you can get a little bit of savings on your utility daily and not just use it for backup power. So there are other benefits to a system like this. All right, now I'm going to kill the utility breaker, and once I do that, everything in our critical load panel here will be completely powered off the Apex 300. Get ready to shut this off, and we'll look at that second bay of lights and the door opener. You can see the light's still on, so when I shut it off, so you can see that light flicker real quick, and I didn't see those lights do anything. So that is the benefit of these battery systems, is the transfer is literally a fraction of a second. So that is nice. I do like that. All right, this thing does give me some numbers on it. Where is it? Where's the pass-through? So right now with the utility circuit shut off, we're running off the batteries, the max output I'm going to get is 3,840 watts. But when it's in the bypass mode where the utility breaker is on, it can then output 12,000 watts because it's not the battery that's outputting it, it's your utility. So you can still have a true 50 amps of 240 for your emergency sub panel. And that is pretty significant because if it's got to be set up this way, I want to make sure I can get the full 50 amps to that panel. All right, I'm going to turn this back on, and we'll see if we notice anything. I actually think there's a little delay in it. I think that was it. We didn't even notice it. So it switched back that quick. So we're back to about 2,000 watts on the AC input, still outputting 545. We're at 80% now. And just like anything and everything now, there is an app for it. So with the Bluetti app, you can see right here all the information that I can look at on the screen, I can see on the app, which is nice because this will connect up to the Wi-Fi. I could be in the house and I can monitor anything that's happening with this machine. It'll give you alerts and notifications, and you can actually go in there and make changes or alterations if you need to. All right, so here's my final thoughts on this particular system and how it's set up. Again, just want to make sure this is very clear. This is just an experiment. Do not in any way, shape, or form hook up your system like this. This is just to see how the system works. What I do like about this system is the ability to kind of customize it to fit whatever your needs might be. I like how fast it switches power over and that there is the option for basically automatic transfer. But what I don't like about this is all of your critical circuits have to be constantly ran through the Bluetti system in order to have the option to get automatic backup power. Now, like I mentioned earlier in the video, You could easily run like a tie breaker between this so you have a utility option in your backup panel. That would allow me to switch it over to utility. There's nothing going through the Bluetti system, but I won't have automatic backup power. If I was to lose power, I could just come out here and flip that breaker over. We'd have backup power. I gotta do a little bit of thinking if I want to install this permanently into the shop. It may not be the best fit for me, but it may be the perfect fit for you. I don't know. Anyways, I hope this was some valuable information for you if you're in the market or interested in the new Bluetti Apex 300. Like I said, this is brand new to Bluetti, so this video is to just inform you on it and show you all of its features and how you might be able to tie it into your home or shop or freaking she shed, whatever. Like always, I will have links down in the description. If they provide me with a discount link, I will include that down there as well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Woo-wee! Love me a power station. Now I have to rewire all this.